For the first time in 6 months of war, the UN Security Council has adopted a resolution calling for a ceasefire in Gaza. 14 countries voted in favor, with the US abstaining for the first time, following the decision Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu cancelled a high-level visit to Washington.
Number one, it's a non-binding resolution, so there's no impact at all on Israel and Israel's ability to continue to go after Hamas. Number two, as I said in my opening statement, it does not represent a change at all in our policy.
Israel says it has no moral right to stop the war, while there are still hostages held in Gaza, criticizing the ceasefire resolution.
134 people hostage on Gaza in the hand of the Hamas, the terrorist group. All the world should know and remember, 6 months almost passed, and the world is silent.
In the central Gaza Strip, the response from people was immediate, with many rejecting the UN's resolution and demanding a permanent ceasefire instead.
بدناش وقف اطلاق النار يكون مؤقت ما لم يكن وقف اطلاق النار كامل ثابت دائم مش لازم احنا بدنا اليوم نوقف وبكره نعاود نرجع للصواريخ والدمار والقتل ما بينفعش الكلام هذا غير مقبول هذا الكلام.
Meanwhile, Palestinians in Deir al-Balah are mourning dozens of victims of Israeli strikes in the area overnight, whilst experts project that northern Gaza will face famine in the coming weeks. The Baltic states have marked the 75th anniversary of Soviet mass deportation to Siberia. Latvia mourned some 42,000 people who were deported to the eastern Russian province in cattle wagons. Newborn babies, small children and elderly, many who never saw Latvia again.
Manam brālītim bija tikai 8 mēneši. Viņš bija slims tajā laikā plaušu karsoni. Bet tomēr, kā saka, izsūtīja mammu un tēti, un viņš izdzīvoja. Es piedzimu tur. Man māsiņa būtu 2 gadu vecāka, tur dzim 2 mēneši nodzīvoja un mīļi palika Krievijā. Es, protams, nekā neatceros, jo man bija 1,5 gadiņa, kad braucu mājās.
Šodien mēs arī sakam ļoti skaidri gan sev, gan pasaulē, ka ar ļaunumu nevar sarunāt. Ar ļaunumu nevar vienoties un ar ļaunumu nevar noslēgt mieru. Ļaunumu var tikai uzvarēt, pret ļaunumu ir jācīnās.
Estonia also remembered the 4-day wave of deportation, the most aggressive act against Estonians by the Soviet Union. 20,700 people were arrested and put into cattle cars bound for Siberia. Hundreds, even thousands of people were later sent after them, making up a total of 3% of the Estonian population.
Three more suspects were placed under arrest in Russia for the deadly terror attack in Moscow Concert Hall, which, at the latest count, left at least 137 dead. 4 suspects were charged earlier, appearing Sunday in court with visible signs of abuse or torture. Only 2 of them admitted guilt, although it wasn't clear if it was under duress.
Nous appelons à les autorités russes ne utilisez pas l'attaque terroriste de Moscou comme un prétexte, comme une motivation pour augmenter l'agression illégale contre l'Ukraine, et aussi ne pas en utiliser comme un prétexte pour l'augmentation de la répression interne contre les critiques de le régime en Russie.
French President Emmanuel Macron said all signs indicate that the Islamic State carried out the attack. It would be cynical and counterproductive for Russia to blame Ukraine, he said. Italy's Interior Ministry is increasing security ahead of Easter following the terror attack in Moscow. The National Security Council said both surveillance and checks will be increased. Members of the UN Security Council took a moment of silence on Monday to honor the victims of the Russia Concert Hall attack. Meanwhile, Russia's foreign ministry spokesperson called into question assertions by the US that the Islamic State was behind the attack. The two 14-year-old schoolboys who helped evacuate people from Russia's Crocus City Hall received awards from Russia's Children Ombudswoman. The campaign for the European elections in 2024 will not be the same as that of 2019. While the climate issue dominated the debate 5 years ago, it is no longer a hot topic today. According to an exclusive Ipsos poll conducted for Euronews, the fight against climate change is a priority for 52% of respondents. According to the same survey, 54% of Europeans believe that purchasing power is more important than the climate. Yet, the fight against global warming remains a priority for the next European Commission.
They managed to put politically, the situation is going to be very different, but the climate issue remains a top issue for the European Union and for the world, simply because even if we are distracted, the climate crisis remains and will unfortunately roll out its impacts on Europe in the coming years as well.
The COVID-19 pandemic, the energy crisis, the war in Ukraine, and the reinforcement of defense capabilities have shaken up the European Union's climate agenda. However, geopolitical emergencies do not necessarily mean there will be an European Green Pact. The Commission's flagship project is expected to enter a new phase during the next legislature.
Is not the environmental concern maybe the driver anymore? Is more competitiveness, is more security? The good news is that the green agenda is, for Europe, good for both competitiveness and security, because for a continent like Europe that needs to import 90% of the oil and gas it consumes, green solutions are the way to become secure from an energy perspective and avoid the situation we have had over the last 3 years. And it's the way to structurally reduce energy prices moving forward for all citizens as well.
The Green Deal remains one of the central responses to strengthen European sovereignty and reduce energy bills. Yet, the fight against climate change is a long-term battle for which Europeans must prepare for the coming decades.
Roughly 45,000 volunteers descended on the Paris de la France arena over the weekend to kick off their involvement in the 2024 Paris Olympic and Paralympic Games. Passionate individuals from varying professions and parts of France attended the Saturday training conference for the mid-year event.
Il fallait absolument que je participe à ma façon aux Jeux Olympiques. J'attends ça depuis tellement longtemps, j'espérais qu'on les ait en 2012. Il a fallu attendre encore 12 ans. Mais voilà, je suis là et j'en suis très content.
Some said they never imagined taking part in the Olympics, while others were concerned about the costs involved. One woman said she has to stay with friends to afford volunteering.
I don't know if it would have been possible. I think the cost is prohibitive for a lot of people that I know that are looking for accommodation right now. So that I hope they do find a solution, because I'm really glad I'm honored that I get to do this.
One swimming teacher from the Meuse region said she is disappointed to pay for all the train journeys, but refuses to give up the job.
J'avoue que je suis un petit peu déçue quand même. Ce que j'aurais aimé qu'ils prennent en charge, c'est les transports pour venir à la convention, le coût du transport aussi pour venir donc sur notre lieu, le site où on est volontaire. C'est le minimum qui devrait être pris en charge pour les bénévoles.
Volunteers get one free daily meal and free public transport travel in Paris. The Olympics start on July 26th.
Economic instability, high prices, shrinking social protection. Demand for a more social-orientated Europe is rising across the EU, according to an exclusive Euronews Commission poll. It is the first survey of its kind to be carried out in 18 European countries. Polling by Ipsos and Euronews found the Portuguese are the most concerned by the rising cost of living. On average, 68% of Europeans want the EU to tackle price increases. Only 7% of the electorate say inflation is not a priority at all. Finns are the least worried about the cost of living. In a time of crisis, EU citizens say they feel impoverished. 64% of people want the EU to defend their social rights and reduce social inequalities. Only 8% would be against this. The Portuguese are on top again. The Poles, meanwhile, are less concerned. The third priority of voters is economic growth. 62% of respondents want EU legislators to implement measures to boost economic growth. Unemployment came in fourth, just behind the fight against illegal immigration. The Dutch are the least inclined towards EU intervention to boost the economy. Social issues are not only priorities for left and centre-left orientated voters. Moderates, conservatives, centrist liberals and right-wing voters are also demanding more social and economic intervention by Brussels compared to previous elections. A robust majority of the conservative ECR group and far-right ID group asked for measures against inflation. Still, when it comes to inequalities and social protection, the left is more demanding. The majority of the Grand Coalition voters are asking for more EU legislators' assertiveness when it comes to taking measures sparking economic growth. Social and economic issues are transpolitical concerns, spanning left and right. The polls suggest that EU leaders could need to boost public spending, devise policies that reduce economic gaps and better protect rights to meet people's demands.